At 21, Mike Tyson was too dangerous for boxing. At just 21 years old, Mike Tyson wasn't just winning fights, he was terrifying an entire sport. This wasn't normal dominance, this wasn't a rising star, this was something far more dangerous. Opponents weren't just losing to Tyson, they were breaking. Some looked defeated before the first punch was even thrown. Others barely lasted a single round. And the most chilling part? Everyone in boxing could see it happening, and no one knew how to stop it. Because Mike Tyson wasn't fighting like a heavyweight. He was faster, he was more explosive, and somehow, he hit harder than men twice as experienced. But to understand how a 21-year-old became the most feared man in boxing, you have to go back, before the belts, before the fame, before the knockouts that shook arenas, or back to a kid from Brooklyn who was built for destruction. Mike Tyson grew up in a world where survival came first. Violence wasn't something he learned in the ring, it was already part of his life. But everything changed when he met a man who didn't just see his anger, he saw potential. Cus D'Amato, a trainer, a mentor, and the architect of something boxing had never seen before. Cus didn't try to calm Tyson down, he refined him. He took that raw aggression and turned it into a weapon, teaching him the peekaboo style, constant head movement, explosive angles, relentless pressure. It wasn't just about hitting hard, it was about hitting fast, slipping punches, and attacking before the opponent could even react. Tyson didn't just learn boxing, he mastered fear. Cus taught him that fear isn't something to avoid, it's something to control. And once Tyson stepped into the ring, that fear didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to his opponents. By the time Tyson turned professional, it was clear this wasn't a normal prospect. He wasn't going the distance. He wasn't learning on the job. He was destroying fighters, one after another. Knockouts started stacking up like a highlight reel. First round, second round. It didn't matter. Opponents barely had time to adjust before they were already on the canvas. The speed was shocking, the power was unreal, and the pressure was suffocating. Heavyweights aren't supposed to move like that. They aren't supposed to explode like that. But Tyson did. And with every fight, the fear grew, not just among fighters, but across the entire sport. Because this 21-year-old wasn't just beating grown men, he was making them look helpless. And deep down, everyone in boxing was starting to realize something terrifying. This wasn't just the rise of a champion. This was the arrival of a problem. By 1986, the whispers had turned into something louder. Mike Tyson was no longer just a dangerous prospect. He was knocking on the door of history. On November 22, 1986, inside a packed arena, Tyson stepped into the ring to face Trevor Berbick, the reigning heavyweight champion of the world. Berbick wasn't just another opponent. He was experienced, tough, a man who had gone the distance with legends. But none of that mattered. From the opening seconds, something felt different. Tyson didn't walk into the ring like a challenger. He walked in like he already owned it. Every movement was sharp, every step calculated. And when the punches started landing, it was clear this fight wasn't going to last. Tyson exploded forward with combinations that didn't look human. Hooks, uppercuts, head movement so fast it was almost invisible. Berbick tried to hold his ground, but he couldn't find him, couldn't time him, couldn't stop him. And then it happened. A brutal combination sent Berbick crashing to the canvas. He tried to stand, and stumbled, tried again, and fell through the ropes. The entire arena froze for a second, watching a grown heavyweight unable to even stay on his feet. That moment became iconic, not just because Tyson won, but because of how he did it. At just 20 years old, Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history. But more importantly, he became the most feared man in boxing. And from that night forward, things only got worse for everyone else. Because once Tyson had the belt, he didn't slow down. He became even more dangerous. Title defenses came quickly, and they ended even faster. Fighters who had spent years climbing the ranks suddenly found themselves overwhelmed within minutes. Some lasted a round. Some didn't even make it that far. It wasn't just the knockouts anymore. It was the way they happened. Tyson didn't give opponents time to think. The moment the bell rang, he was already inside their guard, slipping punches, closing distance, attacking from angles heavyweights weren't supposed to use. It felt unfair, like they were fighting something they didn't understand. And slowly, something even more terrifying began to happen. Jansi fighters were losing before the fight even started. You could see it in their eyes during the walk to the ring, the hesitation, the doubt, the realization of what was waiting for them on the other side. Because Tyson wasn't just beating opponents physically, he was breaking them mentally. The aura around him kept growing. Every knockout added to the legend. Every destroyed opponent became a warning to the next. Trainers had no answers. Strategies didn't work. Experience didn't matter. And the worst part, everyone knew exactly what Tyson was going to do. He was going to come forward. He was going to attack. He was going to try to end the fight early. And still, no one could stop it. By the time Tyson turned 21, the heavyweight division wasn't just dealing with a champion. It was dealing with a force it couldn't control. A fighter who didn't follow the rules of the sport. A presence that turned every fight into a countdown. Because when Mike Tyson stepped into the ring, it wasn't a question of who would win. It was a question of how long his opponent could survive. But even at the peak of his power, there were signs. Small at first, easy to ignore. Because when someone is destroying everyone in front of them, no one wants to look for weakness. No one wants to believe it could end. But it was there. Outside the ring, things were changing. The discipline that once defined Tyson slowly started to fade. The structure that Cus D'Amato had built, the guidance, the control, the purpose, it wasn't the same anymore. And inside the ring, the destruction continued. But something felt different. Because Mike Tyson wasn't just a fighter anymore. He had become something bigger. A spectacle, a storm that boxing itself struggled to contain. And that's exactly why, at just 21 years old, Mike Tyson was too dangerous for boxing, not just because of his power, not just because of his speed, but because of what he represented. He broke the balance of the sport. Heavyweight boxing had always been about calculated battles, strategy, endurance, adaptation over rounds. Tyson erased all of that. He didn't give you time to adjust. He didn't give you time to think. He turned fights into chaos, fast, violent, and unpredictable. And when one fighter becomes that dominant, it creates a problem. Opponents lose confidence. Fights become mismatches. The sport itself starts to revolve around one man. Because who could compete with someone who combined explosive speed and terrifying power and absolute fearlessness? All at the same time? At 21, Tyson wasn't just beating champions. He was making them look ordinary, and that had never happened before. But maybe the most dangerous thing about Mike Tyson wasn't what he did to others. It was what he demanded from himself. Because when your entire identity is built on destruction, there's no easy way to maintain it, no way to slow down, no way to evolve without losing what made you special. And that kind of pressure eventually cracks even the strongest fighters. But for a brief moment in time, before the distractions, before the downfall, before reality caught up, there was a 21-year-old heavyweight champion who didn't look human in the ring, a fighter who didn't follow the rules, a force that turned fear into a weapon, and a version of Mike Tyson that boxing has never seen again, and maybe never will.